Have you ever found yourself wondering why certain people seem to live far longer than anyone might expect, while others pass away prematurely and leave us asking whether it's all just the luck of the genetic draw? It often feels as though longevity is purely random, maybe determined by environmental factors or some combination of good and bad genes. But what if that's not the whole story? What if there is something more profound at work, an internal program, deeply embedded in your body and influenced by your mind, that quietly shapes your destiny? For decades, scientists have searched for the truth behind why we age and why we die. Among those explorers is Dr. David Sinclair, a researcher at Harvard University whose bold ideas and experiments have challenged everything we thought we knew about aging and mortality. He suggests that aging might be less like an inevitable downward spiral and more like a kind of software error, one that can be slowed, halted, or possibly even reversed. If that's true, then one question demands our attention. Can we hack that hidden program and bend it to a new set of rules? Before we dive into the deeply intriguing work of Dr. Sinclair, think for a moment about how we usually perceive time. We wake up, we go to school or work, we shuffle through responsibilities that often feel repetitive, and from one year to the next, it can seem as though life itself is accelerating. Time flies, we say. Birthdays come around faster than we remember. Wrinkles creep in, and the sense that we can't quite keep pace can become overwhelming. At some point, a lot of us accept it as part of life. We simply get older, get weaker, and eventually pass on. But Dr. Sinclair's research offers a radical perspective. Yes, our bodies deteriorate over time, but that doesn't necessarily have to happen at the rate or in the manner we've been led to believe. According to him, there's a sort of aging clock within us, almost like a sophisticated system of instructions. If we can figure out how it ticks, maybe we can learn to reprogram it. Imagine walking through a serene forest in late autumn. The leaves, once vibrant and green, are now shades of orange and brown, drifting softly to the ground. We're accustomed to viewing this annual event as natural. Trees lose their leaves because of colder weather, fewer hours of daylight, or simply because that's just what happens. But Dr. Sinclair and other scientists might point out something else at work here. In many tree species, the point where each leaf connects to the branch actually forms a tiny biological growth that seals off nutrients and effectively cuts the leaf away. It's not just the cold or wind that strips the leaves. The tree itself decides that the leaf is no longer needed and initiates a shedding process. In other words, there's a programmed mechanism that actively tells the leaves, your time is up. Now consider how we humans deal with sickness and age-related decline. We're prone to thinking that our cells, tissues, and organs simply wear out from constant use and repeated exposure to damage. But Dr. Sinclair's view, supported by a growing body of evidence in biogerontology, suggests there might be built-in triggers that cause the body to become less efficient at repairing itself as the years go by. It's as if our systems have a code that says, stop regenerating at this rate, begin the shutdown. But what if there's a way to override that command? What if your body could be nudged into thinking it's still young and worth maintaining at peak performance? We've all heard astonishing stories about centenarians, people living to be well over 100, or occasional anecdotes about someone rumored to be 120 or older. We often dismiss such cases as genetic flukes. Perhaps they chose the right parents, or they adhered to some hidden, perfect diet. Dr. Sinclair, however, would argue that genetics alone can't fully explain these outliers. Instead, they might have inadvertently stumbled upon lifestyle factors or epigenetic triggers, switches that turn certain genes on or off, that prompt the body's repair mechanisms to keep operating at a higher level. They may have broken the usual timeline of decline, or at least bent it to their favor. One of the most striking points Dr. Sinclair makes is that people don't always die from a body that has become completely worn down. Rather, they succumb because the body stops defending itself. When a person remains biologically younger, it isn't that their cells never experience damage. It's that their repair processes remain robust and efficient. Instead of letting problems accumulate, these mechanisms stay active longer, preventing or delaying diseases and frailties. But for most of us, something eventually signals those processes to quiet down. Think of it like software on your computer that has an expiration date, a coded function that automatically starts slowing your system at a specific point in time. If all of this is even partially true, then what triggers such signals in only some of us, while others seem immune? Can this clock be rewound, or at least paused? Dr. Sinclair has identified factors he considers central to hacking the aging code. And interestingly, you won't find him handing you a single magic pill or telling you it's all in your bloodline. Instead, he highlights a fusion of brain-driven and body-driven practices that, if taken seriously, might let anyone resist the usual age-related decline. It echoes the principle many longevity researchers rally behind. Our daily choices can fundamentally alter our biological trajectory. Before we look at 2 or 3 of the key methods to bend the aging curve, ask yourself, do I sometimes feel like life is a blur, that I'm racing through my days without fully engaging, and that real vitality is slipping between my fingers? This is a universal experience. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let people know what troubles you about the aging process. We'll circle back to it soon, because right now, we need to address the core issue, the factors that cause our own bodies to give in. As Dr. Sinclair notes, there is a colossal difference between chronological age and biological age. Your chronological age is how many years you've existed on this planet, but your biological age is how old your cells and systems actually are based on markers like DNA damage, inflammation, and the function of your mitochondria. We've all encountered that 70-year-old marathon runner who seems half their age, or the 45-year-old who feels physically and mentally exhausted as though they're already in their twilight years. The difference can be striking. So, how do we keep our biological age significantly lower than our chronological age? Dr. Sinclair's research, along with other studies in the field, points to 2 major categories of lifestyle changes that most people disregard, often because they think they're already doing them or they underestimate their power. First, keep your mind intensely active. Second, stay physically engaged. But it's not enough to just work or just walk sometimes. The big mistake most of us make is that we settle into routine. We do the same job tasks, watch the same shows, browse the same websites, and rarely push our brains or bodies into unfamiliar territory. That sense of autopilot is comfortable, but it also sends a powerful signal to the internal program that we're not in growth mode anymore. We're coasting, and coasting is precisely what leads to stagnation. Dr. Sinclair's emphasis on an engaged and curious mind is not unlike that of a top athlete who constantly trains to maintain peak performance. If you recall hearing about people who retire and then quickly find themselves slipping into chronic health issues, you've witnessed the phenomenon of mental deactivation. The brain, deprived of challenges, learning, or purposeful problem solving, can start to power down aspects of cognition. In response, the body sometimes follows suit. But if you take a page from Dr. Sinclair's notes, never stop learning, never stop questioning, and never stop challenging yourself to master new skills. You might be able to trick your brain into acting as though it still has mountains to climb. That, in turn, can keep the body's rejuvenation systems switched on. It might be as simple as picking up a new language, tackling complex puzzles, taking up chess or a musical instrument, or diving into new forms of technology. The point is that a mind in motion can keep the rest of you resilient. Then there's physical activity. Dr. Sinclair's research aligns well with countless studies demonstrating that exercise, particularly forms that challenge your cardiovascular system and your muscles in new ways, can slow, halt, or even reverse aspects of aging. It's not that you have to run marathons or become a bodybuilder, but you do need to push yourself, at least a little, out of comfort. That elevated heart rate, that slight strain on your muscles, and that need to coordinate new movements all act like signals to your deeper biology that you're still in the game. While some might believe all movement is the same, the truth is that stepping outside your routine is key. If you've walked 2 miles every day for years on the same route, that's great, but eventually your body adapts. You have to introduce novelty, maybe a faster pace, some intervals of jogging, or incorporate strength training. The body thrives on change and challenge, not stagnation. One crucial piece of the puzzle that Dr. Sinclair often highlights involves something known as hormesis, the idea that mild stressors can provoke a beneficial response in the body's repair systems. When you introduce slight but manageable challenges, like short bursts of intense exercise, intermittent fasting, exposure to cold temperatures, or learning something truly difficult, you momentarily strain the system, which then rebounds stronger than before. Many longevity experts believe hormesis can keep our cells youthful by persistently engaging protective and repair pathways that might otherwise go dormant. Perhaps the biggest misconception about aging is that it's only about the body wearing out over time, as if you're just using up your supply of good health until it's gone. Dr. Sinclair would argue that it's more about misinformation building up within your cells, like errors in a biological computer code. You don't literally run out of the capacity to repair, but your body can forget how, if you allow certain epigenetic changes to accumulate. This is why mental and physical challenges are so crucial. They keep the system from becoming complacent. Complacency leads to cellular confusion, and cellular confusion leads to accelerated aging. But what if you're already 50, 60, or 70 years old? Is it too late to turn back the biological clock? One of the most inspiring revelations in longevity research is that it may never be too late to enact some positive change. There are experiments in which older individuals significantly improve their cognitive functions simply by undertaking tasks that force their brains to form new connections, writing short stories using random prompts, learning coding, or even building crafts. Physical transformations have also been documented. Seniors who began resistance training and balance exercises in their 70s or even 80s often showed measurable improvements in muscle mass, bone density, and overall vitality. A widely cited principle is use it or lose it, but Dr. Sinclair and colleagues around the world have found that once you begin using it again, you might regain far more than you expected. At this point, you might be thinking, this all sounds wonderful, but is it realistic for me? The truth is, it depends on how willing you are to step outside your comfort zone. The biggest challenge is the sabotage of routine. As soon as we feel comfortable in a pattern, our brains stop forming new pathways. As soon as our daily movements become reflexive, our muscles and cardiovascular systems go into maintenance mode rather than improvement mode. Our bodies and brains become like an abandoned building whose lights remain off and whose hallways echo with inactivity. But if you reinstall that sense of purposeful engagement, whether by planning fresh tasks, setting new personal records in an activity you enjoy, or even learning an unfamiliar skill, you can light up those hallways again. And that might be the difference between gradually fading or maintaining a bright spark of life until the very end. You might wonder, but what about genetics or family history? Certainly, genetics play a part. Some people are born with variations in their DNA that may offer an advantage or disadvantage in terms of longevity. However, Dr. Sinclair reminds us that genes are not the absolute dictators of our fate. Instead, they are switches, and our lifestyle choices decide which switches stay on or get turned off. This is called epigenetics, and it's a field that has changed how scientists think about the role of inheritance. If your family history is fraught with illnesses, that doesn't mean you're doomed. It means you have to be even more proactive about flipping the beneficial switches on and keeping the harmful ones off through the kind of mental, physical, and dietary practices we've been discussing. One more important misconception to address is the idea that if you're an intellectual type who reads all day or a creative soul who never steps outside the studio, that alone protects you from the ravages of age. If you're mentally active but physically sedentary, your body gets neglected, and sooner or later, it will fail you. On the flip side, if you exercise religiously but rarely challenge your brain to learn new things, you may find yourself physically capable but cognitively declining more quickly than necessary. The sweet spot, and it's what Dr. Sinclair and many others advocate, is balance. You want to keep your brain agile, your body fit, and your sense of curiosity ever present. Remember that spark you once had as a child, where every day felt like a new adventure. Recapturing just a fraction of that can do wonders, not just for your sense of well-being, but for your molecular resilience too. So how do you apply this practically in your daily life? Start by identifying areas where you've grown complacent. Maybe you haven't read a challenging book in months, haven't tried learning a new skill or hobby, haven't engaged in any rigorous exercise, or have spent too much time scrolling passively through social media. Once you pinpoint these gaps, introduce small but consistent changes. Try setting a modest but meaningful goal, like learning one new piece of vocabulary every day in another language, or taking a brisk walk combined with short intervals of jogging. Or find an online class that teaches you to paint, code, or play an instrument. Even small steps can yield enormous returns if practiced regularly. Think of it as depositing tiny amounts into a youthfulness bank account. Over time, these deposits accumulate, and you might be amazed by the compounding effect. Now, pause for a moment and share with us which part of this trifecta, mental stimulation, physical activity, or stepping into creative novelty, do you think is the biggest missing piece in your life? Maybe you're constantly learning but rarely move your body. Maybe you're very active physically but can't recall the last time you tried to master a new mental skill. Or maybe you haven't tapped into your creativity since childhood. Let us know in the comments below. And as you think about that, consider what first step you can take tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow, not next month or next year. That will shift you out of your rut and into a new mode of living. It's easy to slip back into old habits once the initial excitement wears off. Dr. Sinclair advises that the best way to maintain momentum is to weave these new habits into your routine so thoroughly that they become second nature. Instead of waiting until you have free time, make your physical or mental exercises a non-negotiable part of each day. For instance, if you find yourself saying, "I have no time to learn the guitar," reevaluate how you spend your evenings. Perhaps you can dedicate just 20 minutes to practicing instead of scrolling through your phone. If your excuse for not working out is, "I'm too tired," try focusing on short, high-intensity workouts that last 10 or 15 minutes rather than an hour or two. The ultimate goal is not simply to add years to your life, but to add life to those years. Dr. Sinclair's vision is that by better understanding and managing the aging clock, we can enjoy an extended period of health, energy, and clarity. Imagine being 80 or 90 and still having the enthusiasm to travel, pick up new hobbies, or engage in meaningful community projects. It's a far cry from the outdated notion of retirement as a slow drift toward an inevitable end. We have more control over our aging trajectory than we ever realized, and science is beginning to reveal how. Of course, there is always more to the story. Nutrition, sleep quality, social connections, stress management, and even certain emerging therapies that might one day be commonly used to further push the boundaries of human longevity. Still, the essence remains. You can't buy longevity in a pill, nor can you rely on your genetics alone. The key lies in the synergy between an ever-learning mind, an active and adaptable body, and a willingness to challenge yourself creatively. That is what Dr. David Sinclair and many of his colleagues in the field of aging research underscore. They remind us that each day we have choices. We can remain on autopilot, letting the coded program of aging run unopposed, or we can fight back with curiosity, movement, and resilience. The question is, are you ready to break free from the idea that your fate is sealed? Are you ready to become the author of your own longevity narrative? If your answer is yes, then let that commitment reflect in what you do next. Tonight, instead of settling into your usual routine, make a plan for tomorrow that includes at least one intellectual challenge and one physical challenge. Over time, you might add a dash of creativity, something that breaks you out of your regular patterns. Keep track of how you feel, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. You may be surprised at how quickly subtle changes accumulate into something remarkable. And if ever you feel the pull of old habits or cynicism creeping in, recall the fundamental truth Dr. Sinclair has spent years uncovering. Aging might be written into our biology, but it's a story that can be revised. We can turn the page on the old script that says time inevitably wears us down, and we can begin writing a new chapter where we remain vital and engaged far beyond conventional expectations. So where do you stand? Have you been letting time slip by too fast, feeling each year pass as a lost opportunity to live more fully? Or are you prepared to seize this insight and start hacking your own aging code, step by intentional step? Let us know in the comments what part of this resonates most with you, and more importantly, what you plan to do about it. Because it's not enough to understand the science or nod along in agreement. True change happens when you bring those insights into real actions day by day, as you reshape not only how long you live, but the quality and vigor of those precious years.